Hey, listener, and welcome to another podcast. I'm very humbled to have you here, and I'm very excited for today's podcast because it is very different. I feel very good, and I feel really great to have you here with me. And I will try to maximize our time together, and I'll try to add much value, all that I can to help you, and it will be great. It will be great. Just trust me. So today's episode, if you have heard the last episode that I made, it was about marks and grades and how they are so devilish and how they are so evilish and how they create all the negative behaviors, and then we can get rid of our behaviors in our life as well, proceedingly, and how they create so much incongruity within us. They just I talked a lot about it in the episode, and I went in depth in it. And if you really want to learn about it, go watch my previous episode. On this episode, I want to talk about a serious issue, a very serious issue, just as marks were, but this is on the whole a much general issue, and I want to talk about the solution as well. I just don't want to point out the issue. I want to provide the solution as well. I want to help with the solution as well. And let's start with the question. What do you think, what in your mind is the number one reason our education systems are ineffective? What do you think is? Why are they ineffective? Really, if you think about that, the learning is ineffective. And where does actually learning happens? Learning doesn't happen when you go to college and when you're being called into the principal office, and it doesn't happen anywhere. The classrooms are strictly the place the learning is supposed to happen in colleges, right? That's why you go and sit in the classroom. Although the energy is very low and you are supposed to perform like a robot, still the learning is supposed to happen. And education systems, they will agree with me on this point too, because the classrooms are made for learning, right? But still, they are very ineffective. And let me give you another example. In an average of a class of 40 students, the same teacher, he stands up and he lectures for 40 minutes. And everybody perceives the information, right? Nobody there is deaf. I don't want anybody to be deaf, but everybody perceives the same information, right? The lecture is the same for everyone, but the results are very different. How they understand it, the levels of each student. I'm not comparing one student with another. I don't want to do that. That's the worst thing that you can ever do to a student's mind. But I'm saying that the level at which, if there was a journal, bar, and then we had to compare it with that, so the level would be very different. Some understand it way better. Some don't understand a word of it. So what is actually happening? Is it that someone is made, everybody is not created equal, and one guy is made different from the other? Of course, everybody is created different, but the excuse that we give for that is a very funny, a very stupid, and the most lamest excuse that I've ever heard. And it is that, in Urdu if I speak, Allah ने सबको एक जैसा नहीं बनाया. सबको, हर किसी को डिफरेंट तरह की इंटेलिजेंस दी है. कोई इंटेलिजेंट ज़्यादा होता है, कोई कम होता है, किसी का IQ लेवल, एंड देन वी ब्रिंग इन IQ लेवल एज वेल, लाइक फॉर हैकमैन. कहते हैं कि किसी का IQ लेवल ज़्यादा है, किसी का IQ लेवल कम है. And very interesting example on IQ level is, I want to really eradicate this belief of the IQ level. I think I know of people, and there are these people who are actually coming up. There was this girl from India, and then there was this guy from China. He did a PhD by age 10, and then he learned calculus by age 6. He was working at NASA by age 15. Learn calculus. What's the branch of mathematics? Just mathematics. All of it. Just you get the general idea. He learned it in a very young age, and still he says, it's not me. I was just reading about him on Wikipedia. I read about this article on Facebook, and then I went to Wikipedia, and I really wanted to learn that. What is it that he did differently, that he learned so much in such a little age. And in the end of the article, it was his sentence that I felt like when I was working for NASA, I felt like I was working like a robot and I had no life. This guy has an IQ level. I don't think of anybody else who has an IQ level much greater than this guy. Of course, you see a calculus by age 6, that's a big accomplishment. But still, when he works at NASA, it's what he's great at. He says that I work like a robot. I just wake up, I have to solve these two equations, I'll solve them in the day, I eat, I go to bed, I sleep. Still, meaning that IQ level does not promises you, it might promise you a better academic future, but it does not promise you a life. And then I know of, I read about a girl in India, she has IQ level more than that of Albert Einstein. But really, did she give the theory of relativity, or did Albert Einstein give the theory of relativity? Who did a greater work? So it's just not about the intelligence, the IQ level. The IQ level can differ, but it's not about that. It's about something very, very different inside. It's about you yourself. It's not about comparing you on a bar of. One very funny example, another very funny example that comes to my mind is, if you have seen the movie Dead Poets Society, and in the opening scene, and the teacher comes in class, the new teacher, Mr. John Keating, and he just tells everybody to open their textbook. They open it, they start reading, and then this is a poetry book. This is a poetry book, and Mr. J. Evan Pritchard, who wrote the book, who just compiled the book, in the introduction he's saying that you can practice the poetry measurement method, like the poetry measurement method, by plotting it on a graph. See, this is just, and then Mr. Keating says you need to rip that page out, and that's excrement. Mr. J. Evan Pritchard, that's what he thinks of them, and everybody rips the page out and puts it into the dustbin, and that's very fun scene to watch. And actually, that's what should have been happen. That's the right thing to do, which Mr. John Keating did. The same thing in our education system is we just blindly follow the textbooks as well. So this is one thing. The second thing is that we compare it on a bar. That's just that's made. They're just self-made. It's not real. It doesn't matter a single bit, but it's made in the college. I don't think that if anybody is less intelligent than anyone else. I believe that everybody is created. Albert Einstein said that everybody is born a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And a classroom is a collectiveness of species of different animals, of different species, animal of different species. And the elephant might be comparing himself to the lion. The elephant is not known of because of his speed. He is known of because of his size, and that's what he's great at. But he might be comparing himself to a lion, and everybody might be, and the race in the classroom might be of climbing a tree. Now the monkey in the class might climb the tree very effectively, but the fish in class could not. And then the fish would start comparing herself to the monkey in class, and then the fish would go in such depression, such stress, such anxiety, and even though the fish can do whatever she's best at in swimming, she can swim very effectively and the monkey can't. But this belief system that's been made inside the fish's head, the fish is a human, by the way, it's not a real fish. Inside the fish's head, that belief system itself would stop the fish from going after what she's good at, that is swimming. This belief system itself would just stop, would make barrier. It will be a barrier by itself. So it's not that somebody is much more intelligent, someone is not. The difference is, surely God created us different. God created us very, very different, but God did not do injustice. The education system does injustice. It puts all of us inside a box and no one fucking knows who made that box. No one really knows. But you have to go into the box, you have to work inside the box, and then even when you have a job, it's the same box, just in a different way. Even when you you are proceeding up in your system, it's the same box, just in different ways. And I think the box, it compacts. Really, it compacts, or the weight becomes heavier of the box as you proceed. I mean, in matric the box was like nah, okay, and then in FSC it's like much greater, and the second year, and then university it might be in the university it might be an upper level. So it just, the box just becomes heavier, it doesn't changes. Even when you work for a corporation in a job which you really don't want, the same box, we have a box life, as Tony Robbins says, is that we have a box life. That's another this is just me saying that another perception of our box life. We were created different, but the way is, we were created different in how we process information. No injustice was done, everybody was created with justice, everybody was given own unique powers. And if I talk about learning, if I want to make someone learn effectively, whether it be English, chemistry, physics, whatever it is, if I want to make someone learn effectively, I would first know the student, I would first know the learner, know about the learner, and I would try to get as much as possible about how he perceives the world, about what senses of him are at the peak state, which works the best for him. Not which works the best for me, but for him. I know the message, I understand the message very clearly. But if I just say it just the same way it was told to me, and he doesn't understand, it's not his fault, it's my fault. Because the meaning of the communication is the response that you get. And if the response is a denial, it's my fault, it's not him. So it's up to me to translate that message into the language. And what's this language? What's this language that I'm talking about? Do we have a different language? I mean, all of us speak English, all of us speak Urdu, सब उर्दू बोलते हैं, फिर ज़बान different, ये कैसे? It's the language of the mind, really. It is the language of the mind. The language of the mind, by saying the language of the mind, I mean the way we perceive things, the way we make representations of things inside our heads. Whatever events that are happening around us, they shape us just because of the representation. The events by themselves have no meaning. It's the representation of them inside our head. It's like an image that you make, and that's what controls you. That's what controls how you feel. That's what controls how you behave as well. So this representation, and how is this representation made, is the language. How do we make these representations inside? Whether it be verbal communication, whether it be non-verbal, whether it be pictures, whatever it is, how do we make it? Tell me, how do we perceive the world around us? We have 5 senses, right? We have sight, we have smell, we have touch, we have hearing, and we have taste. All of these are 5 senses. But the 3 main representational system of them are, one is auditory, one is visual, and the third one is kinesthetic, meaning how we listen and how we see and how we feel. These are the main representational systems for creating these images inside of us, which control us. And which one works the best is the language. Now, think about it. If somebody is a visual guy, by visual I mean he must be good with pictures, but he must not be very good with listening. For example, if you want to motivate this guy, you would not go on talking to him all day about what doing this will do to him, how it will prove useful for him. What you can do is you can show him results, you can show him images, you can show him videos, you can show him pictures, whatever, and that would do a much better influence on him than just talking about him of the advantages of being motivated in his life. And then another person comes and he's auditory. You won't motivate this guy by showing him pictures and audios, and not you can make him listen audios, sorry for that, but you cannot make him listen to watch images or watch videos of people really motivated. Listening is what he's best at, so you need to make him listen. You need to translate your message of yours into listening. Albert Einstein, when he was coming up with his theory of relativity, he imagined himself, he imagined himself as a photon going at the speed of light away from his home, or away from his hometown, and that helped him come up with relativity. So you see, he translated the message of relativity. Relativity is just a written thing, it's just logics, but the way you perceive that logic is very different. Albert Einstein did it visually. Albert Einstein changed the logic into a visual thing, and then he understood it more. He deduced more information about it. He came up with a whole theory about it. So changing the I just lost my train of thought here. What was I saying? Changing the message. Changing the message into the language of the learner is critical. And if we just do this one thing, it surely would take a lot of work and it would take a lot of time. But if we do this one thing, just think about think about the wonders that it would create in education. And if you really do this, if you're a parent and if you do this to your child, think about the effectiveness that it would create in your communication with your child as well. If the teacher, it will surely take some time for the teacher, but if the teacher is speaking to a class of 40 students and he tries to do his best in conveying the message visually and kinesthetically and then auditory as well, there is a much better chance that everybody would get the message, everybody would understand it, and they might be actually curious about it. So this is what we need. This is how we can create a change in our life. We can create a change in effectiveness of the system. Since I am in the education business, I won't say it's a business, I just said it. The people who are in the education system are called universities. I'm not in the education business, pardon me. I'm just in, I just talk a lot about education because I love education, I love how they mess everything up. I really love it. So I'm in the education mishap, you can say. So I talk about education, but you can really apply this in your communication with everybody as well. You can look for whether a person is visual, whether he is auditory, what his main representational system is out of the three things, and then you can try to translate that message into his language so that it really gets through. Because it's up to you when you're communicating. Again, the meaning of communication is the response you get. It's not that I tried, मैंने कहा था उसे ये करो मगर उसने नहीं किया तो उसकी गलती है. You tried, but you didn't try it effectively. You didn't try it again. It's your fault. It's not his fault, because you are the one communicating, right? So actually, let me be clear. I'm not saying that this is your fault. I'm saying that this is your responsibility. I don't want you to feel guilty about yourself. Because if you feel guilty, what will happen? If you feel guilty, you will process everybody being guilty, and then you go to this person again, and when you try to help him, and when you try to communicate him again, you'll make mistakes because you're so guilty about yourself. I want you to say that it's neither of your, it is not your fault, neither is his fault. It is just your responsibility to take charge of the situation, because the meaning of the communication is the response you get. So you can just take charge, and by taking the charge of the communication, you can create results, effective results in communication. The same thing that we can do in our schools, same thing Same thing we can follow in our education system, same things that we can do in our life, in our communication with basically everybody. And I think this can really prove very useful for us, not just in the education system, in our life as well. If we try to learn it again, as per I'm trying to say, this would take some effort and some time to master, but it will create extraordinary results in your life for yourself. And whatever you're going for, whether it's for connection, whether it's for whether if you're a parent, whether if you're a businessman, whether if you are a teacher, or anybody, basically, it can prove really very, very grateful to you. And the next time, I want you to do one thing. If you're a teacher and you're teaching, I want you to do something. I want you to try to translate the message into the language. How do you do that? In the next episode, I will get more in depth into the language, of what the language is, how the representational system, all of it is created, and how you can translate the message. But what you can do right now is you can acknowledge this. You can acknowledge and you can make a decision that I am responsible for the learning of every student in class. I am responsible for the way they understand. I am responsible for making my subject interesting, because it's your subject. It's not, they're just there to learn, right? It's your responsibility to make the subject interesting and make it such as so it goes right through the mind, in the mind, and they have a learning experience, not just as a form of writing or reading. They have a learning experience that really is an extraordinary experience, not just this was just a class, it passed. They really are curious and they really are waiting for your class to come. That's how you can that's also how you can create a better relationship with your students, with your friends, with your salespersons, or whatever you are, in whatever business you are. It can prove very effective. So this was today's episode, and I'm sure I love today's episode. It was very focused. It was great. It was great on the whole. I loved talking about it. And I hope I really provided you what I promised for in the beginning of the episode. I love you. I really love you, and I want you to make this change for yourself, not for me. I want you to make this change and just think about it, how it would impact your lives and the lives of everybody around you if you just acknowledge it. I'll see you in the next episode. Till then, take care. Allah Hafiz. I love you, and I'll see you.